This channel talks about movies in slow, clear English to help you practice your English listening comprehension. What does it actually sound like when someone convinces an entire army that they're a prophesied savior? Let's talk about Dune Part 2. Let's start with the story. After his family is betrayed and destroyed, Paul Atreides is living among the Fremen, the desert people of the planet Arrakis, training to fight and survive alongside them. Paul falls deeper in love with Chani, a skilled Fremen fighter who is openly skeptical of prophecies and outsiders who claim to fulfill them. Their relationship sits right at the center of everything that follows. Some of the older Fremen already believe an ancient prophecy, that an outsider will arrive to lead them to freedom. Believers refer to this figure as the Lisan al-Gaib and speak about the prophecy being fulfilled the way you'd talk about a promise finally coming true after a very long wait. Paul's mother, Lady Jessica, has her own reasons for encouraging this belief. As she becomes a reverend mother of the Fremen's religious order, she deliberately spreads and strengthens the prophecy, even though she knows it was originally planted generations earlier as a kind of insurance policy, not a genuine prediction. Stilgar, a Fremen leader who wholeheartedly believes Paul is the one the prophecy describes, starts treating almost everything Paul says or does as further proof, no matter how ordinary the actual explanation might be. It's a sharp, often funny example of how a powerful belief can shape the way people interpret plain, everyday events. Paul himself is deeply reluctant to accept this role. He's had visions of a possible future in which accepting it leads to a devastating holy war spreading across the galaxy in his name. And for most of the film, he actively resists being pushed toward that path. Despite his doubts, Paul begins training Fremen fighters and takes part in raids against the Harkonnens, the ruling family responsible for destroying his own. Each victory adds more weight to the idea that he's exactly who the prophecy claims. One of the film's most talked about sequences shows Paul proving himself by riding a giant sandworm for the first time, a dangerous rite of passage among the Fremen that very few outsiders ever attempt, let alone survive on their first try. It becomes one more piece of evidence, in the eyes of his believers, that he really is who the prophecy describes. Meanwhile, on the Harkonnen homeworld, the brutal Baron Harkonnen installs his nephew, Feyd-Rautha, as his chosen heir, a decision made formal through a ritual combat display in front of the entire court. The entire sequence is shot in stark black and white, under an alien sun, and Feyd-Rautha is formally presented to the crowd before fighting a series of opponents to prove his strength publicly, in a manner closer to a coronation than an ordinary duel. That scene alone is worth studying for its language. A formal introduction announces Feyd-Rautha, with his full title, and the entire ceremony is treated as a kind of public decree, a way of publicly and officially settling who holds power, with no room left for doubt afterward. Eventually, Paul chooses to drink the dangerous water of life, a substance that nearly kills him, but which unlocks a new level of vision and awareness once he survives it. From that moment on, Paul fully commits to the role laid out for him. He formally declares himself the Lisan al-Gaib in front of the southern Fremen, using exactly the kind of confident, deliberate, formal language a leader uses when there can be no ambiguity left in the room. Uniting northern and southern Fremen under his leadership, Paul launches an all-out attack on the Emperor Shaddam himself, who has traveled to Arrakis in person after his authority is directly threatened. In the film's climax, Paul confronts the Emperor and formally challenges Feyd-Rautha to ritual combat for control of the throne, using precise, formal phrasing to demand what he believes is rightfully his. Notice how different this sounds from ordinary conversation. Every sentence is measured, and nothing is left open to casual interpretation. By the end of the film, Paul has won the throne, and the final scene stages his engagement to Princess Irulan as an entirely political transaction, announced in the same formal, ceremonial language used throughout the film for treaties and declarations of power, rather than anything resembling a personal choice. Having formally secured his new position, Paul sets in motion the very holy war he originally feared, while Chani, unwilling to accept any of it, rides off alone into the desert. Now, let's talk about how this story is told, and why its language feels so different from a typical action film. Denis Villeneuve deliberately gives many of the film's biggest moments to speeches rather than exposition-heavy dialogue between two characters. Declarations, oaths, and formal challenges are staged like genuine turning points in the plot, not just background flavor. Even smaller lines throughout the film borrow this same formal register. Words like sovereign, decree, and reckoning appear again and again, all of them carrying a weight and seriousness that everyday English words like boss, rule, or payback simply don't have. This matters for the story's themes too. Part of what the film is actually about is how formal, confident language itself can be used to manufacture belief, whether or not the person speaking it is telling the whole truth. Chani's character exists partly to push back against this pattern throughout the film, repeatedly questioning the prophecy out loud at moments when everyone around her seems swept along by it, giving the audience a skeptical voice inside a story that could otherwise feel entirely one-sided. Alongside our main focus on formal speech, this episode also has 5 bonus vocabulary words for you, pulled from how critics have actually described this film. Our first word is immersive. Immersive describes an experience so complete and detailed that you feel fully surrounded by it. Critics repeatedly call the film's desert world immersive, praising how completely it pulls viewers into its setting. Our second word is visionary. A visionary is someone with highly original, forward-thinking ideas, often ahead of their time. Denis Villeneuve was widely described as a visionary director for how boldly he adapted such a difficult novel. Our third word is meticulous. Meticulous describes extreme care and attention to detail. Reviewers praised the meticulous production design, from the costumes to the sound design, as a huge part of why the film feels so convincing. Our fourth word is sprawling. Sprawling describes something that spreads out over a large, sometimes complicated area. Critics used this word for the film's sprawling political plot, involving multiple noble houses, religious orders, and planets. Our fifth and final word is acclaimed. Acclaimed means widely and publicly praised, especially by critics. This film became one of the most critically acclaimed blockbusters of its year, appearing on countless best of lists. Now, let's talk about how Dune Part 2 has actually been received, and why people are still discussing it years after its release. Critically, the response was extraordinary. The film holds a 92% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes, alongside an even higher 95% audience score. An unusually strong agreement between critics and everyday viewers for a big-budget blockbuster. Commercially, the film was a genuine success too, earning $714.8 million worldwide, against a $190 million budget, making it one of the highest-grossing films of its year and comfortably outperforming the first Dune film. Much of the ongoing critical conversation focuses on the film's political and religious storyline, and specifically on how uncomfortable it deliberately makes viewers feel about cheering for Paul's rise to power. Many critics praised the film for refusing to present Paul as a simple, uncomplicated hero, instead showing exactly how formal, confident language and manufactured belief can be used to justify violence on a massive scale. Some viewers who hadn't read the original novels were initially surprised by the ending, expecting a more triumphant, conventional conclusion rather than the one that deliberately complicates the idea of victory. The film's technical achievements were also formally recognized at the following year's Academy Awards, where it won for its sound design and visual effects, both frequently singled out by critics as central to how convincingly the film builds its desert world. Online, discussion of the film today tends to focus on a few recurring topics. Whether Paul should be read as a hero, a tragic figure, or a warning. Comparisons to how faithfully the film adapts its source novel compared to earlier attempts. And ongoing anticipation for how the story continues in its next installment. Let's go through the formal speech vocabulary from this episode. Shall. A formal way of expressing what will happen, often used in promises, rules, or declarations. You shall be remembered. Hereby. Used in formal declarations to mean by this statement. I hereby declare this house restored. Decree. An official order or decision, especially one made publicly. The ceremony was treated as a formal decree. Oath. A serious, formal promise, sometimes made in front of witnesses. He swore an oath before the assembled fighters. Sovereign. Having supreme power or authority, or a ruler themselves. The sovereign's word was treated as final. Reckoning. A moment when past actions are formally judged or accounted for. This battle was framed as a long-awaited reckoning. Usurper. Someone who takes power or a position that isn't rightfully theirs. He was accused of being a usurper to the throne. Prophecy. A statement about something predicted to happen in the future, especially through religious belief. Many believed the prophecy completely. Fulfilled. Completed or made real, especially after being expected or promised for a long time. The prophecy was finally fulfilled. Try describing a serious, important moment using one of these words, instead of a more casual, everyday alternative. Let's also go through our 5 bonus vocabulary words from this episode. Immersive. An experience so complete you feel fully surrounded by it. Critics called the world building genuinely immersive. Visionary. Someone with highly original, forward-thinking ideas. The director was praised as a visionary filmmaker. Meticulous. Showing extreme care and attention to detail. The costumes and sets were meticulously designed. Sprawling. Spreading out over a large, complicated area. The plot is sprawling, involving multiple noble houses. Acclaimed. Widely and publicly praised, especially by critics. It became one of the most acclaimed films of the year. Try using one of these 5 words yourself, either to describe this film or another large-scale story you know. So, what's the final verdict on Dune Part 2? It's a rare blockbuster that takes its own ideas seriously, using genuinely formal, deliberate language to explore how belief and power actually work, rather than simply delivering an action spectacle. Even viewers who go in expecting a straightforward desert war epic tend to come away talking more about its ideas than its battles, which is a rare thing for a film this large in scale to pull off. If you enjoy large-scale, ambitious storytelling that rewards paying close attention to exactly how characters speak, not just what they do, this is very much worth your time. And it's well worth watching the first film beforehand if you haven't already, since almost none of the political setup is re-explained here. Did you enjoy Dune Part 2? Let me know in the comments on the video, or get in touch. If this helped you improve your English today, subscribe on YouTube, or follow along on Spotify or Apple Podcasts for more movies reviewed in slow, clear English. Interactive learning materials for this lesson can be found for free on engmoviereviews.com.